But now, ladies and gentlemen, our next guest has years of experience shaping U.S. foreign policy and fostering strong partnerships, especially in the Indo-Pacific. Lisa Curtis, she's been instrumental in navigating critical junctures in the India-U.S. relationship, including during Donald Trump's first term. She's joining us live from Washington, D.C., and is someone who has been at the heart of Trump's foreign policy machine. Lisa Curtis, former Deputy Assistant to President Donald Trump and a distinguished director at the Indo-Pacific Security Program at the Center for a New American Security. She's with us on the broadcast. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am, bringing her unparalleled insider perspective. Warm welcome to you, ma'am. Ma'am, first and foremost,
Thank you for having me.
I must ask you this because you're somebody who's worked with Donald Trump, and I need to begin on this personal note. How would you describe Donald Trump's view of India, of Prime Minister Modi, of looking at India as a strategic partner, especially given his focus on China being that assertive dragon in the Indo-Pacific as well? And what can India expect in the next 4 years?
Well, look, I think if you look at Trump 1, you see that the U.S.-India relationship was really elevated during this period, that President Trump got along very well with Prime Minister Modi. I think they had respect for one another. They enjoyed meeting together and working together. You saw this come out at the Howdy Modi event, the Namaste Trump event in India. So there's a lot of goodwill that President Trump feels for the India relationship, as well as his relationship with Prime Minister Modi in particular. So I fully expect that the U.S.-India relationship will reach new heights under President Trump. He's even said that he wants to go to India early in his term. And so he might be the first U.S. president to visit India in the first year of his second term. This would be quite unprecedented to see a U.S. president putting so much focus and attention on India. So I think this bodes well for the future of the relationship. I think another thing that we can point to is the fact that there will be a Quad meeting of the foreign ministers this week. Again, that shows that India will be a priority for the Trump administration. Of course, there's many conflicts that he's going to have to focus on immediately, the Israel-Gaza situation, Russia-Ukraine. But when it comes to the Indo-Pacific, when it comes to this vital region, I think India will be a focal point of that strategy, of that policy. And so the fact that we're seeing a Quad meeting this week is a great indication of that. The only thing that I would put out there is that I think we are seeing that Trump may take a different approach to China than people initially expected. I think it's going to be more of a mixed approach. Of course, leaders like Michael Waltz, the incoming National Security Advisor, Marco Rubio, the incoming Secretary of State, are China hawks, and they will be focused on the U.S. competition with China and all that entails. Whether it is export controls, whether it's restrictions on U.S. investment in China, whether it is building up alternative supply chains, these two leaders will pursue all of these policies. However, you're going to have people like Elon Musk, who has, Tesla investments in China. You'll have the economic team, the National Economic Council, Scott Bessent at Treasury. These people will be focused on the economic relationship. And we know Trump is a deal maker. He's going to want to make a deal with China. So how this plays out in terms of the overall U.S.-China policy is something we've yet to see. But I think there probably is some surprise in India that President Trump has invited President Xi to his inauguration. Of course, it will be the vice president who actually attends. But there has been some reaching out by President Trump to China, and how that will impact the India-U.S. relationship, I think we've yet to see.
Well, very interesting points that you've raised over here, ma'am. Of course, you spoke about that, list of people: Michael Waltz, Marco Rubio, Kash Patel, the FBI director. Not just China hawks, but also, pro-India voices. But before that, I need to ask you about the Quad. You mentioned the Quad meeting, not necessarily looked at as a military alliance, but with Donald Trump at the helm of affairs, could things change in the Indo-Pacific, which is again your area of expertise as well?
Well, I think the Quad will remain an important forum for engagement. But as you said, it's not a military pact. It's more about these four countries, these four democracies, maritime powers coming together, pooling their resources, their capabilities to shape the Indo-Pacific environment in a way that it's a free and open region. You have free trade. You have countries whose sovereignty is respected. So you have free seaways. This is another aspect of the Quad. They've come to maritime security agreements, and there's been a commitment that the four countries' coast guards will start an observer mission somewhere in the Indo-Pacific. So these are all issues that are very important to a Trump administration. We saw in Secretary of State designate Rubio's testimony that he's going to be focused on countering Chinese aggression, whether that is against the Philippines in the South China Sea, whether that's against Taiwan. So on all of these issues, the Quad has become an important mechanism to pushing back against Chinese bullying, against Chinese aggression. So I fully expect that to continue. Whether or not there's more of a military defense focus, I think, that's an interesting question. It does seem that there could be moving forward. They're already dealing with maritime security. It's not that big of a leap for the defense issues to start to come into play. So I think that is something that, could happen, and we have to keep an eye on. But I think the main thing that the holding of a Quad meeting the first week of the Trump administration taking power gives me a very clear signal that the Trump administration does value its partnerships with countries like India, its alliance relationships with countries like Japan and Australia, and that they will continue to build on this important initiative that, by the way, was started in the first Trump administration. It was Trump
That's
who
right.
revived Quad after a 10-year hiatus. So it's not surprising that this, again, the Quad will be an important element of the Trump Indo-Pacific strategy.
Of course. So there's always that possibility as well. And, ma'am, coming back to the second aspect of my previous question, I'm going to add a couple of names to that list. You mentioned Michael Waltz and Marco Rubio, of course, Kash Patel, FBI director. We've got, the senior director for India in the National Security Council, Ricky Gill. And these are all, of course, Tulsi Gabbard, the head of intelligence as well, another name to that list. How crucial will these set of people and their influence be in shaping the India-U.S. relationships and ties in the next 4 years under Trump 2.0?
Well, absolutely. I think everybody you named will have a role in the India-U.S. relationship and sort of the view that the Trump administration takes of India. As I mentioned, Trump already had, I think, pretty fully formed views on India and saw India as an important partner in the first Trump term. While there was some friction over the trade issue, of course, President Trump during his first term had pulled the GSP privileges for India. But beyond that, I think we saw a lot of strategic convergence between India and the US in the first Trump term. You saw that President Trump in his first term supported India when it had its border crisis with China, pulled out all stops to support India in that time of crisis. Also, there was a lot of cooperation between India and the US during the COVID crisis that Trump initiated. So, he already has fully formed views of India, but it certainly will help that you have a lot of these incoming cabinet level advisors and cabinet officials who know India, have visited India, and have strong views in support of a strong U.S.-India relationship. All the people that you named, Kash Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, and others. So I think this all bodes well for India and the future of the U.S.-India relationship. It's not to say there won't be any friction at all, because I think, the fact that Trump, has called out India on its high tariffs, um, the US will want to gain more market access to Indian markets, that's a given. So, there will be some friction around the edges. But I think on the big issues, on the strategic issues, we can see that things are likely to go in the right direction when it comes to US India relations.
You know what, ma'am? It's really reassuring, all of these words that are coming from you as well. You spoke about the tariff issue. That is another hot topic here back at home in India. And the other one is, of course, the immigration policies. Trump's immigration policies, particularly during his first term, they were, a source of concern, of course, for Indian professionals. What can the Indian diaspora, given the H1B visa issue at hand, and of course the H1B visa holders, what can they expect from the administration this time? People are already talking about how they're going to consume the shock and awe, and Indian diaspora already bracing themselves for how Donald Trump is going to approach his visa policies.
Well, I'm glad you raised the immigration issue because I think you're right. This could be another source of friction, particularly when it comes to the H-1B visas. And we've seen the split within, the Republican Party over this issue. You've seen people like Elon Musk get out there and say how important the H-1B visas are
Right.
for U.S. Tech industry, that they rely on these workers and that it contributes to overall U.S. innovation and productivity. But then you have members that are very supportive of Trump, the MAGA group, as we sometimes refer to it, that they are saying that no, this is taking away U.S. jobs, that the H-1B visa program is not good for U.S. workers. And so we've yet to see this fully play out. I think, President Trump has stated that he understands the importance of the H-1B visa program, but if he comes under too much pressure from this part of his supporters, the MAGA supporters, then he could, be influenced to take certain steps. So, we've yet to see how that plays out. But you also talked about illegal immigration, and we know that Trump is going to come down hard on illegal immigrants starting today. He's likely to declare an emergency at the southern border, which will allow him to access funds to, quickly, resume building the wall and to take action against illegal immigrants. And, let's face it, India has the third largest number of illegal immigrants inside the United States. That's to say that Indian citizens make up the third largest group of illegal immigrants in the United States. Now, we saw this play out during Trump's last term,
That's right.
where the issue was handled quietly and effectively. So India has dealt with this issue before with the first Trump administration. So it will know how to deal with it again during the second Trump administration.
All right, so you're saying that we've dealt with this before, not as much of a hurdle, but a small little speed bump that's going to be smoothly taken care of. You know what, ma'am, just a couple of more questions, and I've got a personal one as well in that particular lot. From your time as the deputy assistant to President Trump, help the viewers understand what the man is like as well, how his leadership style is unique. Could you throw some light on that?
Well, I think President Trump is a very personable person. I think he's the type of person when you meet him and you're face to face with him that you feel like you're the only person in the room and that he is focused on engaging with you. And so I think a lot of people don't really realize that he really has a personal touch to the relationships he develops. He's also very humorous. He has a great sense of humor, which also contributes to this rapport building that he makes with world leaders. Um, and I think, but we also have to remember that Trump is not entirely predictable. We've seen that with the TikTok decision. In 2020, President Trump did support banning TikTok on national security grounds. However, now he has been TikTok's biggest supporter. And we saw something very interesting happen over the weekend, where for about 12 hours, The TikTok app was not accessible. There were a lot of angry Americans. 170 million Americans are on TikTok, use TikTok. And then when President Trump intervened to reinstate the app at about noon on Sunday, uh, a lot of Americans were elated. They were very happy. So Trump has his finger on the pulse of the American polity, and I think we have to remember that this could lead him to change decisions based on his reading of the American public.
Well, ma'am, my final question to you is going to be, because he's only the other U.S. president that's made his way back to the Oval Office that is not a consecutive term, and that of course speaks volumes about the man. Many had thought that his career was over after Joe Biden's victory, but he has of course resurfaced from your time in the Trump administration, reflecting on Donald Trump's first term, ma'am. What lessons do you think that the president-elect has learned about navigating complex global alliances, and so many of them at hand for us to see? Take a look at West Asia, for one example. And how might this affect the India-U.S. relationships? How has Donald Trump been able to distinguish the mistakes that he probably made or his leadership qualities and styles from the first term to this one now, ma'am?
Well, I think first of all that he has learned to get people in place quickly, and we've seen that. We've seen that he moved very quickly in naming his cabinet. We see the confirmation process moving very quickly. We see him, getting people in place. I think he said he has 1,000 appointees in line who will, take power on day one today. So he's learned that. He's learned to get his people in place quickly. In terms of, relationships, I think he has learned from his previous term in office that his relationship with key leaders can make a difference in the policies that the U.S. pursues. So I think he'll put a lot of effort into developing rapport and relationships with critical world leaders. And that's why he invited President Xi to the inauguration. This is why he's reaching out. I think he believes he can make a difference in the policies, in the direction of the country's policies, if he has that personal touch with the leadership. So I think we'll see a very active, a very busy President Trump, working the phones, traveling, and visiting with world leaders to try to impact change and move things forward.
All right, ma'am. Many thanks for joining us here on News 9 and taking out the time. I know it's a big, big day for you there in Washington, D.C., and it's a busy day, needless to say as well. Lisa Curtis, ladies and gentlemen, former Deputy Assistant to President Donald Trump and a distinguished director at the Indo-Pacific Security Program at the Center for New American Security. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, as the world anticipates Trump's return, well, we need to talk about so many of those things. People are talking about disruptor-in-chief's return. They're calling it Fast and Furious Donald Trump. Some are even saying it Donald Trump unplugged. But we'll have to wait and find out as to what happens. Moments from now, Donald Trump is going to be sworn in as the 47th U.S. president, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to slip into a quick commercial breather here. Top developments right on the other side. Keep it with News 9 for this rolling coverage, straight and live from Washington, D.C.